Hello everybody, welcome to Planet SkyFF, the world where everything revolves around £50,000. My name's Such.
And my name is James.
And we'll get some football again this weekend. We kind of went through last week's fixtures, transfer planning, I should say, last week. Bit of data this week, bit of Q&A this week.
Yeah, we're just going to cover off some different stuff. There's not huge amounts to update over the weekend. There's not anybody I don't think that's come in with kind of any major injury issue. There is a couple of photographs.
Is Isak not injured?
It's a different game problem, I think. Yes, if you have Alexander Isak, I'd probably move him on.
A few might have bought in
I'd arguably
Sky.
move him on to Alexander Mitrovic, who has some strapping, as photographed leaving Norway's stadium last night following Serbia's 2-0 win, one maybe to keep an eye on. But we haven't actually had any major, I think, Sky injury. Maybe Nathan Patterson for a few. I don't think there are many teams.
No.
7.2. Boubacar Kamara might be the other one. We talk about solutions for him a little bit as we do this. But I want to do some stat stuff, as there's obviously no games to talk through or any transfers that anyone's made, I presume. But wanted to start with a few questions, Suj. And the first I'd like to start with is, which player in the Premier League's had the most shots on target this season?
Shots on target.
You've really taken that long to think about it?
Erling Haaland.
Yes, correct. Erling Haaland.
He's probably had the fewest shots in total as well, I bet. He's probably had like 10 shots and they're all on target.
17 shots on target. What's he got, 11 goals or something? Yeah. Something stupid. But I wanted to go down this route of looking at shots on target, passing numbers and actual tackle numbers, rather than looking at the specific, he hit it 3-4 times or something. So it throws up a few debates. Mitrovic is second, 16.
Is that because you're trying to look at when people have missed it by just a little bit on a number of occasions?
I give you an example of something coming up that throws up some interesting debate points. Mitrovic, for example, second, 16 shots on target. Great price. Was he 7.7 is he for Fulham? Entry points coming up Sunday the 9th away to West Ham and Saturday the 15th, I think specifically for me and a few others, at home to Bournemouth, maybe moving off Ivan Toney on that particular Saturday. There's an interesting name that I wanted to throw up to usage, because Harry Kane is next most for shots on target with 13, joint with another player who's a midfielder. Any guesses?
Shots on target. Sonny?
You won't get anywhere near it, mate. He's 7.8 in Sky.
Well, let's give up then.
It's Anthony Gordon.
Okay.
He's got 35 Sky points so far this season. There is an anomaly of there was one game where he had about 6 shots on target. But one possibly to keep an eye on. Another one has an entry point coming up the following Sunday against Manchester United. I would say there's probably not anywhere where you'd consider captain him, but might be one that enables for you. Sonny's on 11. Gabriel Jesus is on 10. What are you planning to do with Jesus at the moment?
He'll be moving on Sunday. Monday, to be honest.
So you're going to do this kind of popular Jesus to Maddison move?
Yeah. And then from Maddison, I'll be moving to Zaha. That's my current plan.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he's on 4 yellows as well. So although he's doing really well, he's arguably expendable. Because I think even those who are looking further ahead and thinking, I want to keep him for captaincy against Southampton away on Sunday 23rd or Forest at home Sunday the 30th. Well, if he gets booked in the game before, he's going to miss that, isn't he? Yep. He's on 4 yellows. Look, who knows? He may get all the way to the World Cup and not get booked again. But with that midweek blank where they were meant to play Manchester City, I think he'll be expendable for many. Gabriel Martinelli, 9. Roberto Firmino, 9 shots on target. Wilfried Zaha is going to be very popular Sunday week at home to Leeds. He's 8 shots on target. Any plans to get...
He's played fewer games, right? As well, because they had the...
Well, he didn't play at the Etihad.
Yeah, didn't. The Brighton game was cancelled.
The Brighton game was cancelled, yeah.
So he's played fewer games.
He's only played 5, I want to say, Wilfried Zaha. Yeah. So, yeah, he's going to be really popular when Palace host Leeds on Sunday the 9th.
I'll be going from Maddison to him.
That's interesting, just to throw that point up.
I say probably.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say about Maddison, I don't mind that, the idea of, I've got no faith in Leicester, I want to go Maddison for, say, Forest at home and Bournemouth away, and then come immediately off and chain that to Zaha. That's absolutely fine. You're getting a 3-for-0 with certainly one effective captaincy. What would be your plan for captaincy on Thursday the 20th? Leicester host Leeds at home and Fulham host Aston Villa.
I've got Paulinho at the moment. So, yeah.
Might be suspended again by then.
Yeah, that's true.
I would hold Paulinho, by the way, for those that own. Passing statistics, Suj.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, let's do tackles first, considering we just spoke about Paulinho. 32 tackles so far this season is the most in the league. You then got Patterson, who we've spoken about a few times, 28. Nico Williams, he's on 28 as well. I'm certainly holding, certainly until after the Villa game, but most likely till after the Brighton game, Tuesday the 18th. Part of my plan now is to actually work that, where the next day I'd go from Nico Williams to Virgil Van Dijk. He's part of a new plan that I'm looking at now, which gets on the other end of Liverpool's fixture against City and comes into their nice run for the final 5. But another name joint on 28 tackles so far is Tyler Adams. And Tyler Adams, I think, is a really, really interesting option who we've been overlooking a little bit because we've had people like Paulinho at 6.6. Adams has returned every game so far this season. He's 7.3. You talk about Rodri ticking over on his 5s, right? So Adams has got 3, 5, 4, 4, 6, 8, and he's a saving of 1.8 million.
Yep.
And you've got an entry point this weekend with Leeds playing Aston Villa on the Sunday. And I think one thing to consider would be, I'm sure there's someone listening who perhaps doesn't have Jesus and is looking at, say, Maddison, for example, on Monday night, thinking, how am I getting there? Well, Tyler Adams might well be your enabler. He's very much in mind for me now, looking at structure-wise. It might be that I'm considering, and this isn't part of a move for Maddison, but part of that move further along the line in terms of when I'm coming off Nico Williams. I'm looking at potentially Bowen to Adams on Sunday. And I know we spoke about the idea of keeping Bowen through till Bournemouth. But having looked at it a little bit more, that's when I'd probably want to come off Maddison. Is straight after Leicester go to Wolves on Sunday the 23rd. Then I can make my call back to Bowen. The value will be right, Maddison to Bowen, on Monday the 24th. And then I'm missing, obviously, Bowen against Fulham, Southampton, Liverpool. It might be that I don't want Bowen. It might be at that point I'll go, well, I want a cat kicker or a carer or something like that. It's maybe going to hit a tier defensively, for example. So that's one of the ideas I've got in mind at the moment is Adams, and then it brings the money in that will allow me to get off Nico Williams better in the longer term. Reuben Nevis is another one ticking over really, really nicely. He doesn't have any entry points at the moment, but he's on 27 tackles, and you've always got a little bit of potential with him. We don't really know who Wolves' penalty taker is.
No.
I suspect it might be him, by the way. Passes so far this season. Do you know who's had the most such?
Completed successful passes.
Completed successful passes
Rodri.
in the Premier League. It's not.
I can't remember. I think it might have been the
647 Rodri.
Bournemouth game.
Wolves away, didn't it, Tier, last game?
Yeah, but there was a game that he came off at 60 minutes and he'd hit tier 2. I'm sure it was the Bournemouth game where he'd come off at, I can't remember the exact minutes that he came off, but he'd already hit tier 2, like 100 passes in 60 minutes or something. It's got to be Rodri, and it is.
Yeah, it is Rodri. Couple of interesting notes. Cole Walker is only 9 passes behind João Cancelo. And Walker, I think, is one we always overlook when it comes to Manchester City. And I think over the years, the answer to that is rightly so. Cole Walker's 9 million. There's a lot of talk at the moment of the 8 million guys. You've got Nathan Ake in at 8 million. You've got Akanji in at 8 million. Because obviously John Stones obviously picked up a hamstring injury. I guess that's one that will affect people. A hamstring injury for England. So you think, oh my God, Akanji or Ake. Yep, but you still have Ruben Diaz there, and Aymeric Laporte is now back training. So I don't like to dive into Ake or Akanji. I think there's every chance Akanji might hold on to his shirt at the moment, and you will get to see the team on Sunday. One of the benefits of Manchester City over this period is, yes, we'll see it over a prolonged period. We've spoken about of the fixtures they've got left, only 2 where we won't see the team. And from an Erling Haaland perspective, Liverpool away and Brighton at home are those 2 fixtures, and I'd have no doubt about him starting those 2 particular games the way the fixtures map out. So there is case, I think, particularly for a Kanji maybe to look, but I'd arguably paid $1 million more for Kyle Walker at the moment at 9 million. His ownership will be pretty low. He's in 5% of the top 1,000 teams, 8.62% overall. I'd consider that. I think he's one we've never really looked at for Sky before, but will play the majority of the games. He's sitting in a holding midfield role a lot of these games with Rodri, just going and sitting in there, and he's hitting the pass numbers. I think he's hit them every game, except for Newcastle away. He didn't, but every other game he's hit passing tier so far. Wolves away, he obviously didn't play. So there's only one game he hasn't hit passing tier. There's only one that Rodri hasn't hit passing tier. Whereas actually for Cancelo, there's been, I want to say it's 2 maybe for João Cancelo that he hasn't hit. No, forgive me, it's just 1 where he hasn't hit passing tier. No, it is 2 Cancelo, because he went off early against Nottingham Forest, and he didn't, and he went off early against Crystal Palace as well. So the early substitutions is what affected him, but then he's the one that they never want to play without. So
yeah, and he always picks up the tackle tier or occasional shot tier or goal or assist as well.
In the top 10 passes, as you would expect, there's domination by Manchester City. Virgil Van Dijk is in there, and Virgil Van Dijk now, 10.7, has hit. He doesn't feel like it, I think, because of Liverpool's defensive record this season. But he has hit passing tier every game this season. And that was despite the fact in the first couple of games we were looking at a pattern where Joe Gomez was outperforming in terms of passing, and there was a real bias towards Liverpool's right-hand side. Van Dijk's hitting it every week at the moment. And despite the fact that they haven't been keeping clean sheets, Van Dijk's got 14 more points than Mo Salah.
Wow.
Mo Salah has had 5 shots on target this season, Suj.
That's very few.
Do you know how many times he's hit shots here?
That'd be maybe once.
None.
Okay.
Mo Salah's returns so far this season are 8-2, 8-2, 8-2. That's not a spoiler for what the Liverpool score against Brighton will be on the weekend. Those are his returns. And the 8s are a goal against Fulham, a goal against Manchester United, and 2 assists against Newcastle. Mo Salah hasn't hit shots here this season. So if you're going in new, considering we may expect, maybe not in the next 3, but we may expect Liverpool to improve defensively. We do, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
Why buy Salah at the moment over Van Dijk would be a question. I'm not suggesting anybody does either Saturday unless you've
buy
got an injury
Salah because I own Van Dijk and I want him to be a differential. So, you know.
Well, I've held Salah thinking there's loads of weeks that I'm going to captain, and that's probably going to remain the way I go with it. But he's probably looking at adding Van Dijk to it for Liverpool's last 5, starting from the West Ham game on Wednesday the 19th. That's currently where I'm at with my thinking. Eric Dyer's on 4.74, which is a little bit of a drop-off from Van Dijk, but he's ticking over nicely at the moment. He's obviously got 2 goals so far this season. He's probably expendable for me. I think he's probably my cash cow, I think, for Zaha, I think, on Sunday week. But I'd be open possibly even to moving him to, say, Tyler Adams this Sunday, for example. The problem I have is I'm going without Kane. That Everton home fixture Saturday the 15th is the one scary one which I highlighted that week. Over Tottenham's remaining games. My current strategy would be to get Mitrovic on that day and captain him. Thiago Silva's on 4.67. Another Spurs player, Emil Højbjerg, is on 4.58. William Saliba is in the top 10 for passes. Mm-hmm. You any thought of selling him?
Don't own him.
Okay, you won't be thinking of selling him then.
I've got thoughts of trying to get him, but not until the Southampton game on the 23rd for the run-in.
I think despite the fact he's incredible value, he's expendable. He's expendable, obviously not this Saturday ahead of Tottenham, but perhaps afterwards, looking at Liverpool and Leeds and missing it and potentially coming back. I think at the moment he's going to stick for me because I know I'm getting rid of Jesus. There's every chance I will want an Arsenal player for Sunday the 23rd captaincy and Sunday the 30th at home to Nottingham Forest. And if I get there and it doesn't work to get back to Jesus or he's suspended or something, I think I'd rather have Saliba still sitting there. That's my take at the moment, so he's probably going to stay. There is one player from outside the big 6 teams that is 5th for passes in the Premier League so far this season. Do you know who it is, Suj?
5th?
It's 5th. 5th overall for complete pass in the Premier League. Doesn't play for a Big Six team.
No idea.
Plays for Leicester.
Tielemans?
What I should have said is he plays for the team that's bottom of the league, shouldn't I?
Tielemans?
Johnny Evans.
Okay.
7.8. Here's a remarkable stat for you. Johnny Evans has got 12 points so far this season in Sky. 12 points. He's got 13 bonus points.
Wow. That's a lot of minuses for goals conceded, isn't it? Goals conceded, minus twos everywhere.
I just want to take you through his season so far. So Southampton opening day. Oh, it wasn't Southampton opening day. Sorry, Brentford opening day. Passing tier 1. They drew 2-2. Second game, nothing at Arsenal. -1, lost 4-2. Third game, Southampton at home, passing tier 2. Conceded twice again. Fourth game, Chelsea away, passing tier 1. Now, admittedly, Chelsea had a player sent off in that game, you have to remember. Manchester United at home, game 5, passing tier 2. Game week 6, they got beat heavily at Brighton. He didn't hit anything. He hit passing tier 2 at Tottenham as well in a heavy defeat. So he's hit passing tier in 5 of the 7 games. That's despite the fact they've got 4 of the Big 6 in that period and Brighton away. Mm-hmm. These fixtures ease up. Would you consider Johnny Evans Monday night?
No. I'd rather go to Tielemans. If I was trying to save money over Maddison, I'd rather go to Tielemans. And if I'm captaining the player as well, I'd rather go with the higher ceiling. So no is the answer for me. And I also think a lot of people will end up going for James Maddison. So if he does well and they captain him, it could hurt. So not for me, no.
What about both?
Nah. I'm not doing it.
All I'd say is on these next 5 fixtures, so he's hitting them tiers anyway, right? Forest at home, Bournemouth away, Palace at home, Leeds at home, Wolves away. The following day is the West Ham Bournemouth Monday night game. So if you are thinking in your mind, oh, do you know what, West Ham defensive, for example, like the cat kicker, you might be thinking about at the time when that comes round, why not Johnny Evans for those 5? He's going to hit passing tier, I would think, subject to game status against Palace and Leeds. Mm-hmm. He's going to hit passing tier, I think, a lot. What if they do get better defensively? I know there's people will be listening to this or watching this going, James, we've got Danny Ward in goal. I know, and Everson might be worse. I'm not ruling him out, you know.
Okay.
But I don't think I'd want to go just...
You won't buy him.
I don't think...
It's not worth a transfer, Johnny Evans. Like that's one of those risky punt ones that you want to maybe take. But with the number of transfers you have left, I don't think it's worth it. I just don't think the upside is big enough. They're never going to keep a clean sheet. So what are you waiting? What are you relying on?
I'm relying on he's a potential differential, and I'm not winning this game as it stands at the moment.
No, I just don't see the clean sheets at all. So
even with like Forest, Bournemouth next to and stuff. Leeds at home, got Wolves away. Yeah, Wolves can't hit a cow's arse with a banjo. You know that. Mind you, they're playing West Ham this weekend. That might fix it.
Yeah, you never know. I don't think they'll be able to get more than 1 or 2. I just don't see it, mate. I don't see. I mean, Forest have scored in a lot of their games. Bournemouth have scored a few goals recently. So,
I think I would need an injury this weekend. If I have an injury that opens it up, I might consider it. It's a shame actually that the final fixture against Wolves is a Sunday rather than the Saturday. Because otherwise, I think actually Saliba to Evans and back again would actually almost be worth it. The fact they both play Sunday the 23rd means that it doesn't really work. You could hold on for one more, which means you then take in Evans at home to Manchester City and then go for Arsenal, Nottingham Forest on Sunday the 30th as an example. But you hold on for that extra one. You'll be holding on for the fucking minus against City, I think, won't you? So it's just one to highlight. I know a lot of people obviously...
I'd rather hold Saliba through than do the hop on, hop off, despite the fixtures.
And that's my likely take as well, to be totally honest. But I am considering that Eric Dyer's say expendable for me, for example, I think. I'm not ruling it out as... do you know what? I wouldn't advise anybody else to do it. But the passing numbers are there, the fixtures do get better.
Yep.
And fixtures can certainly change things. Yuri Tielemans has the same amount of points so far this season as James Maddison, Suj.
Yeah.
And he's 1 million cheaper. Why are we all buying Maddison?
Ceiling. Upside.
I think that's a very fair answer.
Yeah. I did look at it because that saving of $1 million allows me to upgrade Casado, for example. But when I'm daisy chaining it onto Zaha, it kind of makes no difference. I may as well go to Maddison instead.
Tielemans' tier points have all come in 3 different games this season. So against Brentford opening day, he hit passing and shots. At Chelsea, he hit passing and tackles. Again, there's the caveat that Chelsea had a player sent off early in that fixture. And at Tottenham, he hit passing tier 2 and shot tier. Again, obviously against Tottenham, we can expect passing numbers to be bigger than what they are against other Big Six teams. Why aren't we considering him now for $1 million cheaper and at value that's easier to get to than Maddison?
If people are going to hold him for a while, then I don't mind. But if you're going to go to Maddison with a view to captaining him and then you're going to come off again, wherever that be, Zaha going back to Jesus, whatever your plan is, then I think I'd go with Maddison, higher ceiling.
Because when we actually look at the, and I'll shout out FF stuff, I'm going to nick a few stats off here for Leicester's points tiers so far this season. So Yuri Tielemans, 14 bonus points so far this season. Johnny Evans, as I said, 13. And Diddy, 9. Ward, 8. Unbelievably, yes, he does save some things. Daniel Amati, 8. James Maddison only has 5 bonus points so far this season. It's 9 less than Tielemans. So actually, is it correct that Maddison's ceiling is higher?
Goals and assists is what it comes down to. But like you said, in 3 of those games, Tielemans scored 2 different types of tier points. I'm always a fan of players in Sky that can score points in different ways. They're not just reliant on one way.
Bright falls into there. James Ward-Prowse, players like
these
that.
These guys that do shots and tackles and passes. And I mean, they win a penalty, Tielemans takes it, suddenly he's 1 shot on target already.
And interestingly, to add on to Leicester, which is obviously a lot of focus ahead of the Monday night football, they are second highest for bonus points of teams. Wow. Only Manchester City players have picked up more bonus points than Leicester players.
They have to do a lot of tackling, mate, at the moment.
Well, that breakdown, for what it's worth, is 41 points in passes, 17 in tackles, 8 for saves, and 14 in shots. So the most of that, half of it, is coming from passing, which James Maddison ain't hitting passing.
No, fair.
I don't think it's got... Maddison's where I'm going as well, and I think, as we've said, the Jesus to Maddison move is going to be really, really popular. I wouldn't rule out...
Had to sneeze.
I cannot believe you, mate.
Had to sneeze.
Nico.
Had to sneeze.
Another one.
DJ Kane.
I wouldn't rule out Evans. I wouldn't rule out Tielemans as alternatives. And I think if you're...
Fucking hay fever.
Another one.
Yeah.
Bruv, it's getting cold. Why have you still got hay fever?
I have no idea.
I think for those who've already got Tielemans, I doubt...
he'd hold.
But would you buy Maddison?
No, not even.
Just go with it. Okay, another one. This is like...
It all depends on how many transfers you have. Like, if you wanted to be aggressive and you've got 45 plus transfers...
It's a pandemic. We're going to call this Sudge 22.
I don't mind adding Maddison, but I don't see any massive gains, put it that way.
Okay.
What happened to you when you bought a player and moved the captaincy with Nico Williams? The same will happen here. Someone will own Tielemans, buy Maddison, move the captaincy, and when you move the captaincy, you invariably get a slap in the face. So I don't see it.
I still think Maddison's the right call, and I also think the majority of people are going to go down that route, which is worth saying as well in terms of if you want to cover yourself off. And of course, interesting what you mentioned there, Suj, because I'm going to do this again Monday. We think I'm buying Maddison and not moving the captaincy from Nico Williams this time to Maddison.
Yeah. But I think that's fine because I'm doing the same.
No, that one is...
I'm doing the same.
Yeah, that one I think is a lot clearer than when I went from Paulinho to Nico Williams was, in hindsight, regrettable. Well, not, I wouldn't change it going back, but I think there's a lesson learned. If you're moving the captaincy Nico Williams to Maddison on Monday, I think that's perfectly understandable and reasonable. Just on Forest, very briefly, because tomorrow's podcast I recorded last night with Mark Southerns, and we speak about Forest for a good 40 minutes or so. And I know there's a few people hanging on to Forest assets. Dean Henderson's, of course, absolutely fine. You're going to want to captain him Monday the 10th against Villa. I think same Nico Williams. As I said, he's still joint second in the league for tackles, and some of the fixtures coming up are still okay defensively, potentially, in terms of Leicester, Villa and Wolves. I think the escape for many will be after Wolves, Saturday the 15th, or in my case, like I said, I'm trying to work it actually to get in extra Liverpool the next day on Wednesday the 19th. So Williams 6.9 is a hold. I know there's a few guys who have got a few of the cheap enabling midfield players. One of the things Mark stressed on the podcast was that Lewis O'Brien should be playing. And I know there's a few people have still got him hold for the minute. Obviously, you will see the team Monday night. It might be that he gets back in. I also listened to another Forest podcast called the 1865 podcast. They said the same thing. Couldn't believe that O'Brien came out the team. He's basically been their best player so far this season.
Yep.
So hold that for the minute. There's every chance he may get back in. The only pointer I would make on that is if you wanted to go in new and are looking for a new enabler, perhaps because you've got Boubacar Kamara, and it obviously doesn't make sense to go to Paulinho when the game is suspended, keep an eye on Remo Freuler, 6.6. I think he'll be first choice. He's a regular in midfield for Switzerland. He hasn't hit anything passing tiers yet, but then he's only started 2 games against Man City and against Fulham. He's one to watch. Same price as Paulinho. I certainly wouldn't have him in favour of, but I think he might be one. I think if I had a Kamara problem and didn't have any money, couldn't work a way to get to Adams, say Kamara's going to be out for a while, I'd consider Freuler as a possible solution. All I advise, and I've not done this properly, go and have a look at his historical in terms of tackling, but you're not expecting much at that valuation anyway. And it might be that he would maybe cover you the captaincy against Villa. I think now he's in, he'll stay in. We do think Forest might change to a 3-man midfield. We've got to change something in there, much like I spoke about on the pod last Tuesday when we reviewed the games, speaking about Fulham and how they dominated Forest, and the midfield too had to work too hard. So I think they might change system. If they don't, by the way, Maddison may have an absolute field day, in my opinion, on Monday night. He'll just work in those side pockets. But they can change it with the same personnel. That's important to say. So they could drop Gibbs White straight into a flat midfield 3. So even if the team looks the same, the setup might look slightly different. Something to consider. Do you know, Serge, which team has the fewest bonus points so far this season?
Bournemouth.
No.
West Ham.
Yes.
Yep.
West Ham.
I'm sure we mentioned it last week. Yeah, West Ham.
26 bonus points so far this season, of which there are a couple for passes, half of which are for tackles, 7 for saves, 4 shots on target so far for West Ham. I'm looking at one of the things I think we discussed with Bowen, and when I obviously bought him before the Everton game, was the idea that actually maybe I'd end up captaining him against Fulham when Liverpool go to Arsenal. But I think looking at it now, I'd rather captain Zaha against Leeds, if that's the decision. And I certainly wouldn't captain Bowen the following week when they go to Southampton. I'd actually be quite comfortable captaining Salah or Haaland in the Liverpool Man City fixture, because I think they'll both have joy. I think it'll be high. I think it'll be high scoring when they play each other. So therefore, Bowen at his value 9.6, when there's an exit and a re-entry, and I can have players in the middle that have got gains, I think I'm happy probably to come off, move the money about, and then chain Maddison back into Bowen is now my new plan, I think, Monday the 24th. And obviously, it's weeks away. If perhaps Paqueta's stepped up by them, for example, there are alternatives I can obviously go back and look to. But I think Bowen might be one where actually, having reflected on it, if people want to hold, it's fine. But for me, the new plan probably works better to get rid.
Yeah, he's in a funny situation for me. My Maddison to Zaha strategy is all well and good. Which is your escape for Bowen?
So I've Tyler Adams now considering.
No, but what? Oh, it's literally this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I want to get to a Crystal Palace defender.
Yeah, I'd like to, but I don't think it's going to work for me.
Yeah, I'm really struggling. Bowen to Anderson is the only way I can do it, and there's no fixture gain on that. So I might, after the Fulham game, just move it before the Leicester game while we're away at Southampton and just get it done and then hold him through. But it doesn't fill me with joy doing it that way around, if you know what I mean.
I just spoke about last week. I think if people can go to Palace, Anderson and Zaha, like when Palace play Leeds, I recommend it. Because I think there's people like me are not going to be able to do it. And I think there's an advantage there. I think the fixtures to the end are absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
It is worth saying, and just a caution on this, Palace are the sort of team at the moment people like to throw statistics around about. So they don't look good for expected goals conceded so far this season. The passing numbers aren't there at the moment.
They've had a very tough start.
Exactly that. This is Sky Fantasy Football. Look at the fixtures. Look at the fixtures and understand from what we know historically that this could change around again for Palace. I would not, by the way, and I'm sure I said this last week, I would not go anywhere near Gator.
Yep.
We'll speak about Palace more next week. I just know Johnson's coming in for a game somewhere, and it's going to be like Wolves at home when you're thinking of the captaincy, and it's going to buy it. I would want to go for Anderson or Gahey or even Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is they're so close in price, 7.8 for Mitchell, 7.9 for Anderson, 8 for Gahey. I think Anderson's got the most points, and so I think at the moment I'd probably go with Anderson.
There were 3 teams who haven't hit passing tier yet this season, Suj.
At all?
At all, in any game. Not any of their players.
Wow. Southampton?
Nope.
Brentford?
Yep.
Not Everton.
Yeah.
Okay, Brentford, Everton, and I'm going to go with Forest.
It's Bournemouth.
Okay.
Bournemouth and Brentford obviously play each other this weekend, interestingly, so something might give. Everton are, however, top for tackle tiers across all of their players. Obviously, Patterson's got quite a bit, but there are others, Iwobi, Gordon, there are other players picking up bits. Closest to Everton for tackle tiers overall is Leeds with 37. It's worth saying that Tyler Adams is on around about half of that. Tyler Adams is the highest bonus point scorer in the game currently, Serge. 20 bonus points, 2 more than Virgil van Dijk and Rodri. David Raya, 16, is regrettable. You know what else is regrettable about David Raya? The fact that you allowed me to say Matty Ryan 3 times on his podcast last week and didn't correct me once. I listened back to the podcast on the way home. I was like, what's going on?
I was a little, when you mentioned that, I just thought, okay, maybe James knows something that I don't know.
Where did I even get that from?
I have no idea.
Why didn't you question it?
Because I thought you might know something that I didn't know. So I thought, you know what, sometimes I'll just...
I mean, sometimes I have brain farts and the wrong name comes out. I don't know how that happened 3 times. Thanks for those who pointed it out. It was quite funny. That's all I've got on the stats. I think as well, obviously, this week, in terms of investing... We're obviously looking at Leicester very heavily for Monday night. I think Forest enablers can still be considered. Obviously, you can go into Manchester City on Sunday for the Manchester derby. Leeds v Villa. I suspect Kamara's injury is probably going to rule him out for a while. Seems to be the word on the street. I think Adams is really interesting. And one other player I'd just like to highlight from Leeds is Luis Sinistera, who's more expensive than Adams at 7.9. He's got 20 points so far this season, obviously scored in his last 2. He scored another 2 on international duty against Mexico last night as well for Colombia. I tell you what, if you're looking for a differential for a little period here, he's 0.1% owned, so one person's got him in the top 1,000 currently. You'd do worse punts than him, I think. Leeds fixtures are okay. Villa, Palace, Arsenal, Leicester, Fulham, Liverpool, Bournemouth, Tottenham. There are some good ones in there between now and the end. Entry point for Leeds, I think, ideally, is probably this Sunday rather than the next Sunday. But they do, it's worth saying, they don't go first again till they play Liverpool on Saturday the 29th. So if you are thinking, I do want to get Adams as an enabler, switch the money, Adams isn't one I think you'd be desperate to go to in terms of Like, he's there for you when you want it. You're not expecting Adams to get double point hauls. You're not getting him in to captain him over Haaland, for example, this week. So timing-wise, it might work differently and better for other people. Perhaps, say, for example, someone who's still got Dalot, for example. Although it's Man City away, you might be thinking, well, there's no fixture gain, I'll hold. I mean, I'd arguably possibly still move that, for example. Bad example, probably. But yeah, I think, like, Sinistero, if you wanted to go there, it's Sunday. He's not completely out of my thoughts, but I think Adams is the more sensible call for this.
For sure.
I think.
Yeah. This period between now and the end of the season is very... there's going to be a lot of want over need, and I think I'm going to really try and screw my need head on as much as possible. I'd like, even like you mentioned, Adams is a good option there. The Crystal Palace defender is a good option there. As we get closer towards the World Cup, going back to Arsenal, even though because I'm going to have none by the time I sell Jesus, is something that I'm going to want to do. Maybe injuries will make it easier for me to make decisions about what I'm going to be doing, and no doubt that always happens. But I definitely want to make sure that I've got my need head screwed on first, and just kind of do as little as possible, really, rather than try and chase points between now and the end of the season. Do you think there'll be consciously taking the foot off the gas for players going to the World Cup who don't want to risk getting injured in the last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, just not going in hard on tackles?
Most people think it's the other way, don't they? I must impress before the World Cup.
Well, fringe players, sure. But someone like Harry Kane, for example, he's going to the World Cup and is England's number one striker. He's not going to want to get kicked in the ankle.
Harry Kane's not going to change the way he plays.
No, but pulling out of tackles, maybe. Well, could there be any players that have that in the back of their mind, do you think?
I think there are some, yes. I certainly wouldn't put Harry Kane in that category.
He's an example of a player that's definitely going to the World Cup.
There may be some examples of that, particularly maybe for some overseas players who are perhaps playing for teams who are going to be sitting in mid-table or something, maybe. But I think it's just weird the way it's worked this year, with obviously it being in the middle of the season. So I think we can expect that more going into World Cups in summers, where teams in April and May don't have anything to play for so much. Now, everyone's got something to play for, really, haven't they? So I don't think so, Serge.
Okay. I feel like also we're looking at it, there's kind of like this break, that Man City Liverpool game, which breaks the rest of this season into this half. There's like 4 weeks and then another 4 weeks. And I'm looking at it and I'm planning really up to that, and then wait and see what happens with injuries, and how I'm doing dictates how aggressive I'm going to be in the second 4 weeks. I don't know what your thoughts are on kind of breaking it up mentally into that.
I just think there are real gains to be had now, isn't there?
4.
You've got obviously Leicester Monday, you've got Palace the following Sunday, for example. I just think there are things coming up where I'm not looking at it in the moment going, oh my God, I'm on 37 transfers left, I need to slow down.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it going, if I need to make the moves, I need to make the moves. So I'm probably looking at a plan now where actually, and I'm going to have a lot less than most people, where I'm probably going to be on the other side with probably around about 29 or 30 transfers.
Okay.
But if I'd have said that this time last year, I'm going into December, January with 30 transfers. They think, okay, you've used 10. Okay, so this time I've used 20 to fix more stuff, probably. So I think if it's there to be had, have it, is my take. Remember, like that whole week that was postponed is probably all going to go into the same period, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably not going to be gains around that period. Yes, they're going to be the odd ones and stuff, and we'll have the blanks around the cups and stuff next season. You'll certainly be worth having extras going into April or May next year. That's definitive. But I'm not worried about using them at the moment.
Okay. Should we get into some questions we had on Twitter?
Yes.
Tom FPL Physio bought Tielemans ahead of the Spurs game last Sunday. Would you still do Jesus to Maddison to cover ownership? And with the fixture gain, I take it as an easy yes if Jesus gets booked versus Spurs. Obviously, Rob Pick already also has Tielemans, but strongly considering Maddison in for the double up. So we've mentioned this. For me, if I owned Tielemans and I had less than, let's say, 42 transfers, I probably wouldn't add Maddison. But if you've got plenty of transfers, then kind of, be aggressive and go for it.
I think I'd go for it.
The captaincy, the ownership is going to be huge, isn't it, on Maddison by the time we get to Monday?
I think so, but as I've said, I do think Tielemans and Evans offer alternatives. What I would say is I think if you're on Tielemans, as already said, I don't think it's a necessity to have to get Maddison. I probably, would get him, and then Tielemans sits there as a nice differential for you.
Thomas Kuchar needs a replacement for Kamara at Villa. He's already got Paulinho. No, Paulinho suspended. He doesn't say whether he will, but he has got Brennan Johnson already in the team. Tyler Adams?
If you can get there, yeah.
With the money, yeah.
If not, Freuler, possibly. Did you say he's got someone else from Forest?
Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, it's worth saying. I really think for those with Forest assets, we don't focus too much on FPL on that podcast. It's just chat about Forest. Brennan Johnson's place is at risk as well. I think you should be conscious of that because most who've got Forest assets are looking not really at Monday because most of us are getting something Leicester. It's the Villa game the following Monday. And particularly if they do badly again at Leicester, it might be that he really does. If he hasn't changed the system against Leicester and they get well beat, he's definitely changing it afterwards. And that would put Johnson at risk, I think. Because then if they decide to go, say, Freuler, Yates, O'Brien, or they've got Kouyaté, or they can drop Gibbs-White in deeper, drop Lingard in deeper, you'd play him with one less attacker. And it might be that he decides to keep Gibbs-White higher or Lingard higher and play it behind Awaniyi, for example. And therefore, Johnson's place is potentially at risk. So I think Freuler, dive into the data. There might be something there. He's cheap. He's 6.6. Could be something there.
Ian Parrin wants to know whether the second quarter of Sky, being now until the overhaul, World Cup overhaul, will sort the wheat from the chaff.
Chaff?
Yeah, the chaff or the chavs in the chaff. Will the seriously big moves be made after the overhaul in the second half? I'm thinking after the overhaul in the second half is where we're going to really see some movement. We'll see a bit between now and the World Cup, but not much.
I think we're going to see. I'm not holding back from making moves.
Yeah, but for the majority of people, I think it's going to be.
I just think there are some obvious ones at the moment. Like I've even said, regrettably, I don't think I can get the double Palace. I would get the double Palace. I don't think it's going to work for me. Leicester, you want to go double? I think it's fine. So there is plenty to chop this about. And I think, again, those like you, Sud, who are sitting there, you got 47?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd strongly be considering going to Leicester on Monday, personally. And to Palace the Sunday afterwards. And hammering into these little runs you've got. How many runs like this are we going to have where, truthfully, you can oppose a lot of the big teams here?
Darren mentions an alternative to Wilfried Zaha, Philip Billing. Going Zaha, he adds, involves 2 extra transfers and he's unlikely to captain him.
You sure? Who you captain Tuesday the 18th?
Ask Darren.
That's the question I'd ask to Darren. Because I think Wilfried Zaha at home to Wolves is a standout that night, Tuesday the 18th, personally. Philip Billing's doing absolutely fine. He's 7.1. It's decent value. He's obviously scored in the last 2. There's nothing to go with it bar a tackle tier against Aston Villa on the opening day. There are better options. It feels like another one. I'm looking at the West Ham game in the future and that'll cover me some captaincy. Honestly, if you're buying Billing at 7.1, I'd really rather you forced in Solanke. Can't believe I mentioned it on this podcast. At 0.2 more.
Okay.
I'd rather that. And I think, arguably I'd arguably prefer Tavernier to Billing at 6.8. So I think realistically for this format, Bournemouth's not a priority. There isn't an entry point. They're playing Brentford Saturday unless you've got injuries. Maybe like if you want to go like Kamara to Billing on Saturday, like fine. I don't hate it. It wouldn't be my first choice.
Debbie wants to know who the best second Leicester asset to pair with Maddison is. He's going for man of the match in his second team. So in that case, surely Tielemans.
You mean manager of the month?
Manager of the month, sorry.
I'm going to say we've got
manager of the month. Motham. Tielemans?
Do you know what? I think Evans.
Tielemans.
I'll stick my neck out.
Go on. Stephen Barnes, Williams in for Saliba on the 10th of October if you have no captaincy coverage for Forest Villa as an effective 5-for-1 and bring Saliba back on the 23rd of October, or save the transfers.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we discussed this the other week. The fact that the Brighton fixture is on Tuesday the 18th means you do have Forest over many teams 3-for-1. I'm not sure I'd want to be holding on for the Liverpool game, so it might be change something off to then make another move to go to Saliba Sunday 23rd. You're not expecting anything at home to Liverpool Saturday 22nd, are you? That is looking like a 0-pointer in front of your face. But I think, yeah, if you've got nothing, you should buy Forest on Monday the 10th and take those 3 games, which is certainly going to have one captaincy at home to Villa.
Okay. Also, what's the best flavour pot noodle?
Barbecue rib.
Sweet and sour. I haven't had a barbecue rib.
That's a thing, isn't it?
Bombay Bad Boy.
I don't think I could act that.
Nah. But sweet and sour, I think, is my go-to. I don't like the too artificially flavoury ones. So
okay.
Sweet and sour. Dan Stewart, what to do with Rashford? Not keen on keeping till overhaul. I think he's overperforming and the points will dry up. And Zaha is an obvious replacement, but there's no fixture gain.
I would be looking at buying Leicester Monday night. I'd keep Rashford for the Manchester derby. I spoke about this on one of the FPL pods we did after he hauled against Arsenal. Was I think of his braces, 80% of his braces in the Premier League have been against Big Six opponents.
Okay.
Like something mad. So he does tend to return in some of these bigger games, ironically. And there are a few more to come as United have Tottenham Wednesday the 19th, Chelsea Saturday the 22nd, for example. But if you don't want him, the right solution here would be to chain it, right? You say there's no entry point to Zaha. Take a Leicester player for the 2 games.
And then chain it.
What you was already mentioning, right?
Every day, John Stone's problem, looking to downgrade for budget for Salah. Current options are Fofana, Zuma, Tyler Adams or Adarabioyo with Fulham's favourable fixtures.
Fofana, we would all like to have if he gets in the team, and I'm sure that he will get in the team, but we've got nothing bar one Champions League fixture to go off and he didn't start it. So I think for those who've got Fofana, I think you hold. There's also the benefit of Saturday the 8th, the following week, because there's no 12:30 kickoff, that you will see the Chelsea lineup at home to Wolves on Saturday the 8th. So I think you certainly hold if you've got Fofana up to that point, would be my opinion. Unless it looks really clear after the Palace game, oh shit, I need to get off. In which case, probably Adams actually is probably your one value and rework things around from that perspective. Who was the other players mentioned, Suj?
Tyler Adams, Zuma, Adarabioyo.
Adarabioyo's quite interesting. They have a decent run of fixtures coming up. Newcastle and West Ham don't smack you as brilliant, but then they've got a nice run of 4, and they are hitting some passing numbers. The only thing I'd be cautious of, he's 6.7, he's great price. Obviously, he's hit passing numbers in the last 2, which is against Tottenham and Nottingham Forest, and they are 2 of the easiest teams, yes, including Tottenham, 2 of the easiest teams to hit passing tier against. So I wouldn't get overly excited about that personally.
Okay.
Plus, I think there are 2 better options in this game from the same team in Paulinho and Mitrovic.
Jordan Williams is inside the top 1,500, but has used 14 transfers. So feels his rank is inflated. With that in mind, would you avoid moves completely or sit tight or attack? You're obviously in the attack camp. So obviously, kind of sort of in the attack camp.
I think
but
my team is right for the attack camp. If your team isn't, you shouldn't be. It's worth saying, Jordan's saying he's what top 500?
1,500.
1,500, so he's in a better position and may use one more transfer. There'll be teams a lot higher than Jordan have used 20, 25, 30.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's true.
none of the content creators currently, because obviously on FF stuff, you can see the content creator league, everybody who kind of produces content for Sky. No one's in the top 100 at the moment.
Okay.
So, and we wouldn't expect that. Was it even top 1,000, maybe even?
They're definitely Fergie and McNulty were in the top 1,000 last time.
You're right, they're about 300. Luke's top at the moment. There's no one in the top 100.
Right.
So, and we shouldn't expect anyone to be in the top 100 at the moment because we know there are going to be people out there who spent 25, 30 transfers, for example, right? So there'll be people ahead of you who spent a lot more as well. I think you're well positioned, Chris. It depends what you want. If you're like me and you know you've got players where there's obvious gains in front of your face, like moving on the likes of Jesus, for example, don't not do it because you've used X amount of transfers. Make the transfer if you think it's the right thing to do. Ask yourself, are there definitely going to be, if you want to move Jesus to, let's say, Maddison, and you just, I'm not going to do it because I've used 14 transfers, you think there are going to be 36 better opportunities left than this? The answer is no, isn't it? The right thing to do is make the transfer.
Any single game days you're currently planning on skipping, asks Luke. The Kamara injury means he's going to miss Forest Villa, but also planning to skip West Ham Bournemouth.
It could be that I end up with that one. Obviously, I've got Tony currently for the Brentford Brighton fixture Friday 14th. Plan is to go to Mitrovic the next day. If something happens to Tony, I think that's probably going to be a leave for me, I think. That said, I have mentioned the idea of having a Brighton player for captaincy, Nottingham Forest at home, then sell it straight on after that. I think Forest Villa, I think you should buy a Forest player. I really do.
Michael Harland, Fergie recommended captaining VVD on Saturday for me over Tony or Bowen. However, is it a bit dumb for me to captain Tony, especially if VVD is guaranteed 99.9%? I think Tony could hit a brace against Bournemouth. Difficult one to answer, but cheers, boys. We didn't cover off who we're going to captain this weekend.
I think Sunday's Haaland. It's fairly straightforward unless you got a preference for Cancelo. Monday will be Leicester player, so almost definitely Maddison for me. Saturday will be Salah for myself. We previewed that fixture, Liverpool V Brighton, with FPL Loco Lord and FPL Seagull last week. We think there'll be goals in it. I think it's important that you probably listen to what we say about Brighton stylistically and how they may change. If you've got Brighton assets at the moment, by the way, don't stress it out. If you've got like McAllister and stuff, sit there for the moment. We think there'll be goals in the game. But actually, ironically, from the choices, yes, probably I would go Van Dijk from those choices.
Darren, would you go from Kamara to Fofana this week, who may not play, or wait till next weekend to bring Mitrovic in after the Jesus to Maddison move on Monday frees up the striker spot?
Again, I think we'd all like Fofana if we knew what was happening. It's worth saying there's probably no captaincy there. There's no major need for it, I think. And actually, once you get past the Wolves fixture on Saturday the 8th, which obviously isn't going to be an entry point for the majority of people, then you've got Villa away, Brentford away, United at home, Brighton away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away. So you've got 4 away games. The away form's been fucking atrocious so far. And the 2 home games are Manchester United and Arsenal. Like, how much do you want it? So it's probably, unbelievably, despite the fact I think everyone will go, yep, want him, not going to work for me, I don't think, Suj.
Okay. Gavin Doyle?
In terms of the question, though, Kamara to Fofana, the answer therefore would be no.
Wait.
I'd be looking at alternatives.
Gavin Doyle, would he be mad to go against the grain and captain Maddison at home to Forest rather than Haaland at home to Manchester United?
Next question, please, Serge.
Yeah, it's just no. Well, we'll leave it with Chris, because we get this asked a lot. How many is a good number to have post-overhaul? And do we think a good proportion of the current top 1,000 will have used a lot of transfers come the end of the overhaul?
Oh, the top 1,000, yeah, a lot.
I reckon I'll be on anywhere between 42 and 45 transfers.
There'll be someone in the top 1,000 who's going to have used a lot.
Your plans to be what, 33, 34?
No, less. Probably going to be 29 or 30.
Okay.
I think. Which is more than I'd have wanted it to be. It's more than I anticipated it to be in pre-season.
Used as opposed to have.
No, left, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have about 29 or 30 left. I think most people will end up being around the mid to high 30 mark. And I think there will be plenty that will go into overhaul with 40 plus.
Yeah, my if I only do the Maddison Zaha moves right now, I'll be down to 45. But I think somewhere between 42 and 45 is where I'm going to end up. If I can be in the top 3K, 3 to 4K with 42, 43, I'll be quite happy with that. We don't know how the fixtures are going to land the other side with TV fixtures.
It's nowhere known.
But
and
there might be.
You shouldn't even think about it.
No, but there might be a really good opportunity to steam in and use 2 or 3 transfers to pile into a certain team and then break away from early post-overhaul. So,
well, hopefully, overhaul won't be obvious in terms of what teams should look like. We really hope not, because everyone just ends up with the same team at that point. We want to get there. If you're listening, you think you're a good player, you want to get there and you want to have choice and difficult choice, rather than, oh yeah, shit, look, Chelsea got single game days at home to Bournemouth and away to Nottingham Forest, and everyone starts thinking, oh yeah, how many am I getting Chelsea defensive, for example? So we want to have difficult decisions at that period.
Nice. That's a wrap. That's an episode of Sky Fantasy Football for you listeners, whether you're on YouTube or listening to the audio. Make sure you're subscribed. You'll get notified as soon as any of our other content goes live. James, tomorrow you have already had a chat with Mark Southerns, Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, looking further ahead of those Chelsea fixtures, they've got City and Liverpool in 2 of the 3 afterwards, so you wouldn't be going that many Chelsea defensive. Chat with Mark, which I think is really interesting for Forest assets at the moment. Like I said, it's more of a general chat about Forest. No deadline stream Saturday because I'm going to the Emirates and I'm not going to have time. So I'm doing it Friday night. Lovely
jubbly. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are a keen Sky player and want to join our Slack community, head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL. All the information about our Patreon is there. Other than that, look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Pay it your way. Good luck. Cue music, please, man child.